Hey everyone. In my consulting work, I've seen a lot of our clients and content teams struggle with chaotic content requests. They're getting requests either from their end clients or their teammates. These requests are coming through various forms, emails, chat messages. They come in a lot of non-standard formats. And what happens is this starts to become a task where processing these requests, inserting these requests, and then moving those requests over to their content management system becomes a full-time job of just review and triage. So today in this demo, I wanted to explore streamlining a request intake using Asana, and then generating first draft article content directly in the CMS when a content request has been approved by an operations manager or a content manager. So today we'll use Asana for request intake and task management. We'll use N8N for automation and workflow capabilities to sort of streamline this process. We're going to use Claude Sonnet 4 as our agent that will help take the request and process it to become content in the CMS. And we're going to use Content.ai's MCP server to actually insert that content into Content.ai, our headless CMS in the equation. So we'll just jump right into it. This is just, a pretty raw demo. We'll start at the Asana request form. So you can see here, I have a request form set up for Asana that takes in a content title. We're going to focus on the article content type today. And then I just have some long text here asking for a brief content summary and some key messages the article should convey. So this is something that the end client or the content requester would fill out, saying essentially what they want to accomplish with the article that they're requesting from the content operations team. We also have target persona here. So what audience is this target or is this article trying to reach? We have brand voice, so maybe there are some specific brand guidelines at our organization that we want the AI generated draft to try and encompass when it creates that content. The goal of the content, which is always important for any content team. What are we trying to achieve? Is it education, awareness? Is it thought leadership, et cetera, et cetera? And then, a due date, and we'll just set that. So we could submit this here. I've already submitted one of these forms just for the sake of speed, and you can see it here in our content requests Asana board. So these selections actually mimic what's in the form, and that's just how Asana request forms work. Is you can create these custom fields, and then in your form you can link the form input element to the custom fields that you created here. So that's what's happening here, and that's why you see all of these tags. Is these were the selected values when the content requester filled out the form. So we have this post-surgery recovery program request. I'm just going to move it into review as if I was the reviewer on the content team. You can see that there is an automated workflow step in Asana that moved it to review. And if we click open this task, you can see in the description the brief content summary and the messages to convey, also how this task was created. And there's a link to the form. So a lot of metadata and content here that we're going to want to pass to our automated workflow when we move it to the in progress and content.ai step. So far nothing's been triggered. This is just simulating the content request intake. If we go to N8N, N8N is for creating automated workflows. What's great about N8N is you can add an AI agent and start attaching it to an LLM to process messages from the agent. And you can also attach it to some MCP servers that exist out there. So in our flow, we have an Asana trigger that will get that task, that content request task. Once we hit that in progress and content.ai step, we're going to evaluate if that task is in progress and it's an article. And if it passes that check, we're going to pass it to an AI agent. Now, if we pop open this AI agent, you can see that I've written a prompt here that will dynamically generate these values between the brackets based on the task that is retrieved in the previous N8N workflow step. So it's a pretty simple prompt. I'm just asking it to create an article, content, item variants, and I'm trying to use these dynamic nodes to fill out things like persona, voice, and the actual contents of the request. That way, the AI generates a reasonable first draft off of what the content requester submitted. So these are a pretty dynamic prompt based on the content request intake form. So that is the agentic part. This connects out to the content.ai MCP server, which will actually handle inserting that draft content into the content.ai headless CMS. I have a couple of nodes here, like this one does nothing. I'd say in a production workflow, I would actually branch this off and probably give some error messaging or handle errors in a more graceful way, but this is just for the sake of example. So if our agent goes through and actually creates the content item variant in content.ai, on success, it'll create a subtask in Asana saying that a draft was created in content.ai, and then the content operations manager can assign that out to a particular member of their team, a content editor or reviewer on their team. So let's actually execute this workflow. Let's turn it on. It's going to start waiting for Asana triggers, and that will put it through the workflow paces. We'll go back to the content requests, and I'm just going to move this to in progress in content.ai because that is the trigger that my N8N workflow is listening for. So we're going to wait here. This trigger is going to pop. It's getting information about that task. It's evaluating if it's an article. And now's the fun part. It's going into that AI agent, and it's going to start processing using Claude Sonnet 4. It's going to try and take that prompt, and it's going to basically try to figure out how to insert this content using the content.ai MCP server. So this will process through, and as we see successful runs, this is going to store that prompt into memory. It's going to talk to Claude Sonnet 4 to try and evaluate what it needs to do with that content. And now it's bouncing to the MCP server to actually start observing that content. So if we actually pop open the MCP, it's actually going pretty fast, so I'm having a hard time keeping up here. You can see that various tools from the MCP server get called, and then it's sending it back to Claude to evaluate what the response was from content.ai, and then it can further its chain of thinking here of what it needs to do next. So for example, this is listing the content types so it can figure out the structure. Then it moves on for snippets to figure out the structure of snippets. It's trying to figure out the taxonomy groups that I use on that content type. Let's see, we'll go to the next one. It's listing languages to make sure it upserts the variant in the correct language. Assets, it's trying to find an appropriate image to add to the article. It's gone ahead and added a content item. And we're still processing here. So this last part should be a bit heavier because the next step naturally after the content item is created is it'll create a variant. So it's actually trying to insert, well, generate first those text values based on the brief and then insert that content into the content item variant in the CMS. So we can actually pop into this node here, and I think we might get more information. So you can see the message that it's trying to process here. And it's executing the node. But at any time during the workflow in N8N, you can jump into one of the respective nodes and see what is being input, what is being output, what's the schema of the information that was passed to it. So I think that's a really cool feature of N8N as well. And as we're waiting for this, another awesome feature was from the schema view, when I wanted to create those dynamic elements in my prompt, it was a really drag and drop level of experience for me. I was able to drag and drop items into that prompt, and it just gave me the appropriate code between JavaScript brackets, which I can show here. And I know there was an error, but I think it was on a subsequent run of the workflow, but we can check that out in a second. But yeah, what I was talking about is these values that are in green here. I literally just dragged the elements over from the schema and placed them into my prompt. So I really didn't have to think about, all right, what level of dot notation do I need to use to get down to the element I want, which was an excellent experience. So it said it created the subtask. I want to check this out. I want to go to content.ai to make sure the draft was actually created, because that's a huge value add. So let's refresh this. That's the view of the CMS, the content item inventory that I'm using, that I've targeted with my MCP, content.ai MCP server deployment. And in here, we should see a new draft. We do. Karma Health launches innovative post-surgery recovery program. I'm going to close out the navigation tree. There's no preview set up for this, but here we go. We see a nice introduction. It grabbed an image, and we can see the recovery journey matters to us. I selected empathetic as the voice, so that's pretty cool. And they front loaded it with some quotes about listening to patients and their families. So, you know, at a first glance, it seems like it's trying to use that empathetic tone. Pretty complete content here. And then let's check out the AI metadata. So AI generated, nice. That's just something I like to do with my content types, is to try and flag what was AI generated or not. And then there's some disclaimers about AI generation, which are default values I have, and I showcase that in a different project, but I just wanted to make sure my taxonomy term was selected there. And then patients and caregivers. This was the persona that we targeted. Also in my prompt, I asked the agent to put a link to the task in Asana that this content request correlates with. And let's see if it brought me to the correct task here. I'm hoping that this is the case. Just because it joins these two content operations a little bit closer, right? Instead of all this manual back and forth between the systems, if we have a direct link to Asana co-located with the content item variant, it'll be easier for the content reviewers and editors to associate that task with the actual content that they want to be working on. So it went to the actual task in the content request board. And you can see that that subtask, review AI draft in content.ai, was created once the AI generated that draft. So this final step in the workflow, create a subtask, worked appropriately. So there's a lot of chaining potential here. I mean, we can start to add things like automatically assigning assignees in Asana, assigning due dates that make sense on the content item variant in content.ai. We can start thinking about assigning contributors in the CMS and other metadata that will help facilitate this request intake flow between the task management tool and content.ai. So this was just a taste of it. I think that, you know, this workflow was relatively easy to build, and you could keep chaining follow-on activities from here. You could also create additional workflows in the reverse direction, where if something happens in content.ai, that maybe there's a trigger set up in a separate workflow that then acts on the Asana data.